London awoke in the summer of 1665, but an unsettling change had swept through the ancient city. It was a transformation far more insidious than the usual clamour of merchants or the bustling throngs that filled its narrow streets. A chilling quietude had begun to settle, punctuated by the relentless, mournful tolling of bells. Red crosses stark and ominous appeared on doors, marking homes with a dreadful pronouncement. Windows were sealed, not against the summer heat, but against an unseen enemy that defied explanation. The air, though heavy with the usual city odors, carried a new, inexplicable dread. The cobbled streets, while appearing much as they always had, now held a silent terror. An invisible threat circulated, baffling the populace, claiming lives with ruthless impartiality. If you appreciate documentaries exploring pivotal moments in urban history, consider subscribing to the channel to support revealing how cities faced their greatest challenges. This 17th century London was a metropolis bursting at its seams, a vibrant, chaotic organism thriving on trade and ambition. Yet, beneath its energetic facade lay a profound vulnerability. Dense wooden houses, often several stories high, leaned precariously over the streets, nearly touching across the narrow passages, blocking light and air. Open sewers, little more than ditches, snaked their way through the city, carrying waste directly into the Thames, the very river from which many drew their drinking water. The streets themselves were a chaotic mix of human and animal traffic, often poorly ventilated, creating a suffocating environment ripe for disease. Urban hygiene was rudimentary at best. Household waste, despite sporadic attempts at collection, often littered the streets, accumulating in putrid piles. Animals, pigs, chickens, dogs roamed freely, contributing to the general unsanitary conditions. Potable water sources were unreliable, often contaminated, and sanitation practices were virtually non-existent by modern standards. These pervasive conditions, while not the direct cause of the impending plague, nevertheless created an ideal environment for its rapid and devastating spread, weakening the city's defenses against any contagion. The unseen mechanism of the plague remained a terrifying mystery to the Londoners of 1665. Modern understanding now tells us that the bubonic plague primarily spreads via infected fleas, often carried by rats, which thrived in the squalid conditions of the city. But in 1665, such knowledge was centuries away. Instead, the disease was attributed to corrupted airs, noxious vapors rising from the earth or from rotting matter, or even more terrifyingly, to divine punishment for the city's sins. This fundamental misunderstanding had profound consequences. Hygiene efforts were tragically misdirected, focusing on visible filth and perceived bad smells rather than the actual microscopic vectors of contagion. Authorities, including the city's aldermen and the Lord Mayor, did attempt various sanitation measures. They mandated street cleaning, encouraged waste removal, and ordered the burning of aromatic herbs like frankincense and juniper in public spaces and homes, believing these strong scents would purify the air and drive away the miasma thought to carry the disease. People took personal measures too, carrying bouquets of flowers or pomanders filled with spices near their faces, hoping to ward off the perceived bad air. Bonfires were lit in streets, crackling day and night, their smoke intended to cleanse and disperse the contaminated atmosphere. These actions, while well-intentioned, provided a false sense of control, a ritualistic defiance in the face of the unknown, while the true enemy, the tiny flea and its rodent host, remained elusive, continuing its silent, deadly work beneath the very noses of the terrified populace. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. With the true enemy still a mystery, the city resorted to desperate, often brutal measures. Perhaps the most chilling practice, and one that etched itself into the collective memory of Londoners, was the sealing of homes. Upon the diagnosis of plague within a household, the entire dwelling became a prison. A red cross, stark and terrifying, was painted on the main door, often accompanied by the chilling inscription, "Lord have mercy upon us." Guards, often armed and under strict orders, were posted outside these condemned houses, their grim task to enforce isolation, preventing residents from leaving under any circumstances. This policy, intended to contain the contagion and prevent further spread, frequently became a death sentence for those trapped inside. Whole families, sometimes numbering a dozen or more, found themselves sealed within four walls, often with the disease already circulating among them. For many, it meant a slow, agonizing wait for the inevitable, transforming their homes into tombs. The hope of recovery was often extinguished by the very measure designed to protect the wider community, leading to near-certain death for the confined. Amidst this grim reality, life in London became a macabre dance with death. The once bustling markets, the heart of the city's commerce, emptied out, their vibrant energy replaced by an eerie silence. Shops remained shuttered, their owners either fled, ill, or confined. Yet the essential services, the very sinews of urban survival, had to continue, albeit in a horrifying new guise. Doctors, instantly recognizable by their distinctive beaked masks filled with aromatic herbs, a desperate attempt to filter the corrupted air, moved through the streets like spectral figures, their presence a harbinger of doom. The constant haunting sound of the death cart's bell, accompanied by the cry of "Bring out your dead," became the soundtrack to the summer of 1665. These carts, often operating under the cover of night to minimize public panic, collected the bodies of those who had succumbed, carrying them to hastily dug plague pits outside the city walls. Despite the omnipresent threat, personal hygiene practices among the Londoners remained largely unchanged. Regular bathing was a rarity, considered by many to be unhealthy, and clean water sources were already scarce and often contaminated. Fear, a palpable, suffocating blanket, became an integral part of daily life. Yet the city did not entirely grind to a halt. Some, driven by necessity or grim resolve, continued their work, maintaining a semblance of routine amidst the escalating horror. Others, those with the means and opportunity, fled to the relative safety of the countryside, highlighting the stark choices available, or rather, unavailable, to the majority. The Great Plague, while indiscriminate in its infectious reach, cruelly exposed and exacerbated the profound inequalities of 17th century London society. The wealthy, those with country estates or sufficient funds, had the means to escape the suffocating grip of the city. They packed their belongings, gathered their families and servants, and sought refuge in rural havens, effectively isolating themselves from the epicenter of the contagion. For the poor, however, such options were a pipe dream. Lacking the resources, the connections, or the alternative dwellings, they remained trapped within the city limits, living in far closer proximity to the contagion. Their crowded tenements, often housing multiple families in cramped, unsanitary conditions, became breeding grounds for the disease. While the plague did not discriminate by social class, rich and poor alike could fall victim. The living conditions profoundly influenced exposure and, consequently, survival rates. Densely populated neighborhoods, characterized by their narrow streets and dilapidated housing, bore the overwhelming brunt of the epidemic. These areas, already struggling with poverty and inadequate sanitation, experienced devastating impacts, with entire families and streets being wiped out, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and loss that would linger for generations. The Great Plague, in its tragic unfolding, served as a stark, undeniable revelation. The limitations of hygiene when divorced from scientific understanding. Londoners of 1665, and indeed much of Europe, perceived cleanliness through a pre-scientific lens. Cleaning the streets, while superficially beneficial in removing visible filth, addressed only the symptoms, not the root cause. Burning aromatic herbs, a common practice believed to purify the air, offered psychological comfort and perhaps masked the stench of decay. But scientifically, it was a futile gesture against microscopic pathogens. Isolating homes, though seemingly logical as a containment strategy, often sealed the doom of entire families, trapping them with the very disease it sought to control. Without any comprehension of bacteria, viruses, or the actual vectors of disease, the fleas and rats, these measures, despite the desperate efforts of the authorities and the terrified Londoners, were inherently incomplete and often tragically ineffective. The city fought valiantly, with every tool and belief at its disposal, but it fought a fundamentally misunderstood adversary. Its defenses were built on assumptions and ancient theories, leaving the true enemy to operate unchecked in the shadows. As the plague finally began its slow, agonizing recession in late 1666, it left behind a city irrevocably altered. Tens of thousands had perished, the exact number forever debated but certainly catastrophic, reshaping the very fabric of London society. The city survived, yes, its spirit resilient, but it was forever changed by the searing experience of the Great Plague. This profound ordeal, etched into the collective memory, exposed the urban fragility that had previously been taken for granted. It underscored, with terrifying clarity, the critical importance of sanitation, public health, and a deeper understanding of disease. Though the scientific breakthroughs were still centuries away, the suffering of 1665 laid the groundwork for future transformations in public health and urban planning. The Great Plague, beyond its tragic death toll and the immense personal sorrow it inflicted, fostered a slow but profound realization among the surviving Londoners and eventually future generations. That urban survival, the very existence of dense human settlements, hinges not merely on physical infrastructure or economic prosperity, but crucially on knowledge. Knowledge of how disease spreads, how to prevent it, and how to build cities that protect rather than imperil their inhabitants. In the narrow, often unsanitary streets of 17th century London, marked by the chilling red crosses on sealed doors, modern history began to learn this crucial, hard-won lesson about life, death, and the invisible forces that shape our world. The memory of the plague, though eventually overshadowed by the Great Fire, remained a silent testament to the power of the unseen and the enduring human struggle for understanding and control. If you wish to continue exploring how cities confronted disease, crises, and transformations throughout history, delving into the extraordinary stories of human resilience and scientific discovery, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. Many more urban stories await revelation, each offering a unique window into the past and the lessons it holds for our future. Join us as we uncover these fascinating chapters, revealing how societies have continually adapted and innovated in the face of their greatest challenges.